Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. We're here to have a fun and conversation with Mark and Miranda here. Before we get started with introductions, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Kate McDermott, the Director of Product Management here at Lightspeed. I oversee our Insight product, our Signal product, and our MDM. I'm going to turn it over to you guys if you want to introduce yourselves. Miranda, we'll go ahead and start with you. If you could just share your name, title, district, and approximately how many students you serve.
Yes, so I'm Miranda Snyder. I am the Director of Technology Training and Development Department at Northside School District in Texas, in San Antonio, Texas. And we have slightly over 100,000 students currently.
Awesome. All right, Mark.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Plavinsky, Director of Technology for Cherry Hill Public Schools in New Jersey. So we're just outside of Philadelphia here in South Jersey, and we support close to 11,000 students each day.
Awesome. We have a part two of introductions. And Mark, I'll let you go first this time. If you could just give us a quick overview of how you guys are structured, so like your department structure, and what are the core teams that are core responsibilities that you guys are managing day to day on your team?
Great question. So here in Cherry Hill, we have 19 schools, and from a department structure standpoint, we have 16 individuals that range from our field technicians to myself, to our network team, to technical support specialists. So I have a range of individuals, but as many technology departments, I have more buildings and many more people than we have folks to support. So our core mission is to ensure that learning is happening every day in our classrooms, and that there's seamless access to technology. And our team just has to be efficient in what they do. So we look for every opportunity we can to deliver a great support experience and let the technology fade to the background and let learning come to the forefront.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Miranda?
Yeah, in Northside, we're a large school district. We support about 132 campuses. And my department, Training and Development, we are a division of Technology Services. And we have other divisions that are our sister departments, and that include our information services, our integration folks. Then we have our acquisitions and project management to make sure we have all the things we need in all of our tech projects and initiatives. We have my team, Training and Development, that focuses a lot on the front line tech support at the campuses, since we are largely a one-to-one district with some few exceptions out there. And then we also have our IT support services, which is like our help desk and our technicians. And we have our IT infrastructure services, like our network technicians and Wi-Fi folks and client admin, sysadmin.
Awesome.
And
That's a big team.
yes, and with the big team, we don't often have folks that wear as many hats as you would for a smaller school district, but we support a lot of students, a lot of staff. And just like Mark said, it's all about student success and teaching and learning. Ultimately, that's our job, is to make sure that that carries on seamlessly in the classrooms.
Well, that's a perfect segue into my first question. There's obviously, a lot that your teams both fall to your teams, regardless of team size, student size. It's like the issues from all the districts I talk to seem to be very similar, the experiences. Um, what are some of the sort of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing now during the school year in terms of like managing technical or digital disruption? So that could be like device related, app related, network health. What are some of sort of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing today?
I'll start off and Mark can come on in. For us in Northside, we have a lot of students, we have a lot of staff, so we have a lot of devices, we have a lot of apps, so we have a lot of things. And knowing, just having a good idea of what's working, what's not working, and trying to be proactive is often a challenge. So knowing, for example, like what apps are being used, or when there's an app outage, students, are they using the correct device? Are we having any systemic issues across all of our sites, on all of our campuses and departments? So really having that line of sight into what the user experience is, being that we're all sitting in an office somewhere at central office, but what's happening at the campus.
And I think we have a very similar experience with that. Lots of things, right? Lots of apps, lots of devices for us, relatively speaking to the size of our district. And those challenges of making sure that students have access to technology and access to the tools. There's such a variance of tools used across our campuses. So there's certain tools that are used commonly, looking at like a Google Suite, something along those lines, that when they're having issues, we see them, we get the reports pretty quickly. But a lot of the challenges that we're seeing more frequently now are that they're these micro challenges. They're not macro issues where an entire Google Suite is down, luckily, or the internet across campus is down. It tends to be something where a particular app is having challenges, and trying to get details and drill into those of what was the cause. Was it connectivity in the classroom? Was it the devices? What are the particulars of that, to try to track down with our staff and log that and get the information we need to interact and have actionable items to react to, and not just look at it as noise.
That's an interesting way of putting it. And by the way, we looked at our data about a year ago to compare like technology usage based on district size. And we actually found that it's consistent regardless of student population. So like smaller districts have the same number of things to support as larger districts, with like oftentimes smaller teams. So that's something that we actually see come through in our data, which is interesting, Mark, that you mentioned that.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. The other thing I want to touch on, you talked about I forgot how you phrased it. It was perfect. Like micro issues,
Micro
um,
issues, yeah.
micro issues that have probably macro impact. How do you guys find out about that stuff? Like if it's like lots of little things all over the place at different schools, or, if it's like a little app issue here and a little network issue here, how is that stuff surfacing to you guys right now?
Well, I would love to say I have to put my IT hat here on for a second. I'd love to say we get, the tickets come in and they put in our help desk tickets, but that's not usually how we end up finding out about those. It's usually a frustrated teacher who's coming to either their supervisor or, poking their head out in the hallway and looking for whoever they can find. We do have pathways of communication that, we give our principals some lateral to reach out when they're starting to see a larger issue. But that's typically how they come to us. It's a complaint. It's something where this
Yeah.
hasn't worked all year, or this wasn't working for the past month. That's typically how issues and teams seem to come to our team. And then we want to try to get the right folks involved. And, it's a lot of follow-up questions, unfortunately, for
Yeah.
staff, because what we typically get is it just doesn't work. We don't get hey, I was on question 7 of this in Kahoot and it, showed the error, could not connect to network. I rarely get that. I get it just doesn't work and it never works. And it takes a lot of follow-up to get the information that we need from the IT perspective to be able to trace down where along the route the problem actually exists.
Do you have the same issue, Miranda? Like, do you have that micro issue?
Absolutely. And I feel like we rely a lot on user reporting. And not that we don't have some insights into, of course, if something's on like a status page for a vendor product, or somehow like fiber cut. So there are certain things that of course we know, and we can be a little more proactive about. We're not waiting for people to raise their hand, but unfortunately that just is the world we live in sometimes, and we are relying on users to raise their hand and tell us things aren't working right. And I think especially for IT folks and those that have worked at the campus, like you, that kind of stresses you out a little bit, because what I don't know, what do I not know, and are people out there suffering in silence when perhaps I have a team of people that could help be the solution finders if only we knew there was a problem. So so yeah, very similar experience.
Well, this is my next question is actually you're touching on it perfectly, which is just getting out of reactive mode. You guys, there's so much that falls to you all. And I know reactive mode or firefighting mode is oftentimes, unfortunately, like just the way it is, especially when you've got teachers poking their heads out with sort of vague information saying, hey, it's not been working all year. Have you all taken any steps to try to be more proactive or like shift more into like a monitoring mode versus a sort of a wait and see mode?
And I'll jump in here. Yeah, we definitely have quite a few years ago, we invested in a network monitoring tool. I think that was one of the proactive pieces where we have monitoring on our Wi-Fi network as we continue to expand Wi-Fi, and it wasn't just in selected locations as it continued to have to grow across campus. We found it a necessity to have a network monitoring tool that could alert us if an access point went down, or a group of access points went down, or a group of network switches went down. We needed to have some proactive communication there. So we have some decent visibility into that. Power is also an interesting issue here in Cherry Hill. A storm comes through and the power goes out and the internet goes out. And those are the kinds of things it's also difficult for folks. We have backup generators and UPSs on things, but depending on the length of those outages, also knowing when there's some power issues going on in a building, we get alerts from our UPSs and things like that, became a big piece of visibility, because when the power's fluctuating and the computers are fluctuating, the connectivity is fluctuating, mostly because of the devices, not because of the network itself. But folks, sense that. And start having challenges. We continue to also look for tools that we could use proactively, and we have one in particular that we located a couple years ago that monitors from the client side our Wi-Fi network. So we see the client perspective of, in selected locations, what the performance of the Wi-Fi network is and what the performance of the wired network is. And it has that monitoring and logging that we needed, because we needed some way to be able to go back and say, well, teachers were complaining that XYZ wasn't working between, 10 a.m. and 11. And we can go back and look at that tool and said, was the network up? Was there something the other network monitoring tool didn't pick up on? Because, right, that's more hard stop, device down type information. It's not, hey, there was, a big spike in network usage because, a big news something came up and everybody went to go stream video. It's a little harder for us to see that. So that gave us a little bit more of the network perspective of things.
Nice. I'm sure it's been really helpful for you guys.
Very.
I would say for Northside, similar, like having that, we have, and I'm not on the technical side of things, I'm on training and development, but I know we have tools out there for connectivity, like monitoring connectivity, internet, power, everything that Mark described. I think the challenge continues for us to be more proactive measures for students using the right device.
Yeah.
Can I find that out? Yes, but what would trigger me to even look into that?
Yeah, how would you even know? Right.
Yes, or with apps as well. If there's an app outage that's maybe a known issue, that's not something that we are set up to be proactive about necessarily right now. So I think there are still some of those challenges, but yeah, for connectivity, I feel like that's not as big of a challenge, having that line of sight proactive and being able to be proactive, and then also having some boots on the ground frontline workers that can go communicate when we do know. So, being proactive and recognizing there's an issue and then communicating that issue are two very different things. So making sure you have a system in place to then channel that information down to your users.
Yeah, communication's its own can of worms. Once you know
Yes,
there's a problem, that's its own job, just to get the information out there.
yeah, to the right people that can continue to trickle that information down.
And update folks. So you mentioned device tracking. So, we hear a lot from districts that students swapping devices. Well, we hear a lot of different scenarios for why devices get kind of out of sync in terms of what is the asset management, who is supposed to have it, and then who actually has it. This is something that we hear about, whether it's like principals just sort of, handing stuff from one kid to another and not really like circling back. Kids just swapping devices, kids being kids. How you touched on this, Miranda, like, that you don't have a good way of identifying this, or you could figure it out, but it would be hard to. If you were to try to figure that out today, what would you do to sort of identify those situations? Or can you right now?
I could identify them if triggered to go in and do the things. And the things would be using our asset management system to run reports, and then basically comparing like usage off of assignment, but very manual, very like
Yeah.
spreadsheets and comparing items that way, but nothing that's going to trigger me and let me know that Johnny is using his sister Susie's device or whatever it may be.
What about you, Mark? Does that happen to you guys in Cherry Hill?
The time. The Chromebooks look alike, right? And they go on a
Yeah.
desk, and I've heard many cases of I picked up my sister's device at home because both Chromebooks look exactly the same. And somebody comes in and they're using the fourth grader's Chromebook in high school and vice versa. We definitely encounter that. We have devices that get misplaced in school, and we try to go through a process to track them down within the building because very frequently we find them. But again, it's as Miranda was saying, it's very manual. There's a lot of pieces behind it. It's using our asset management tool, then comparing to what's in Google Management Console, and we have another sort of third-party tool that gives us a little bit more of tracking insight. But everybody sort of also gets this idea that Chromebooks in particular are just like the Find My feature in the various platforms that at any given time we can just press a button and ping the device and it'll give us its location anywhere in the world, and it's just not that simple. So it involves a little bit more work on our part that especially since Chromebooks, for example, aren't always on, right? You close the
Right.
lid and they're not connecting every path along the way with GPS and whatnot. So it does have its challenges, and as we have a lot of devices, there's just a lot of them. And part of our access to technology is ensuring that students have loaners available if a device breaks, or if something happens, their battery dies, or and that just continues to kind of complicate the conversation because it just puts more devices in the mix. And we're always trying to
Yeah.
strike that balance of the device is that access to information and assignments and work, and we don't want to impede that, but we also want to be fiscally responsible and not just put a set of devices out there for open access to students and staff.
Which makes perfect sense. And speaking of fiscal responsibility, in terms of like inactive devices, so trying to figure out are there devices out there that could be reallocated to, excuse me, to a different school, or that we don't need to refresh because they're sitting in a closet somewhere. How do you guys find those sort of inactive devices, or underused? Maybe they're used like once a year. How do you have a way of figuring that out right now?
I can say for Northside, we're aware that this is a thing. And but as far as an efficient process that we're competent in, um, not necessarily, but we do still have insights through like asset management, Google Admin Console to have a line of sight into the usage. But as far as being proactive, that it doesn't really help for being proactive and reactive, as in here's an issue, can you look into this? Yeah, we can do that. But looking and seeing how many devices are being used regularly and being able to quickly, easily, proactively identify devices that haven't been used in a while, um, this is definitely an opportunity for us. That we are looking
Yeah.
at ways that we can continue to improve. We have some ideas, some things we tossed around, but they ultimately still are manual processes that are very time consuming at scale. So yeah, maybe Mark has a great idea. Oh,
I wish I did.
mhm.
Very similar, right? There's not a specific piece at scale that we look at either. It's a lot of manual process, and I would love to get more proactive and say, hey, there's a group of devices that haven't been turned on in 2 weeks. What's going on there? But some of that's expected, and hopefully not 2 weeks. We hope devices are used regularly, but we're a K-12 school district, and I've heard more recently we went one-to-one or bring your own device hybrid model, K-12. And in our elementary in K-5, we do have devices available in classroom for every student, but those devices in kindergarten, I can share anecdotally, are not used as much as the devices are in the high school. And
Right.
but we have a different issue in the high school where it's what we call an on-demand one-to-one. So some students want to use their own device and some students want to use their district issued device, and they don't all use them every day, because we don't require them to just use the district device in school. So our biggest fear is that we have devices sitting under a bed somewhere that aren't being utilized because we forced issued a device. So we try to strike that balance, particularly at the secondary level, to not have devices just sitting idle, because it doesn't really help us.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So let's talk a little bit about communication. We touched on it briefly earlier. When a tech issue comes up, whether it's, like there's an app outage, there's a device, a misassigned device or network stat, anything that kind of falls onto your teams, what does the communication look like for you guys across teams, like across different departments or different groups of staff or trickling down to site leaders?
So we have a couple of channels of communication. We do have just an all-out like help desk info board, I guess we could call it, where we put outages, known outages. Certain key members of the district are also notified via email of that, so that kind of kicks off that communication. Um, I have some of my department are actually work at campuses. So we channel a lot through our tech support specialists, which are housed at campuses. Some of them support several campuses, but we channel information down to them so that they can share with their campus. And they also give us feedback in real time, like, oh, hey, we aren't experiencing this, just so you know, or actually it's doing this, just so you know. And so we have that direct connection to the campus, which really does help with the communication. Other than that, we rely on leaders to communicate down to their teams. Like we can get to the campuses, and then we can communicate to central office administration. They can get it down to principals, and so just really having that communication tree kind of established for any communication, not just tech outages or tech issues.
Awesome.
We're
Thank you.
very similar. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I just said thank you.
No, and we're very similar here in Cherry Hill. That communication, the channels, we're very lucky to be part of the curriculum and instruction team. So we have a lot of regular interaction and work with our curriculum and instruction team who are leading a lot of the app implementations and system implementations. So that type of communication really helps us because we know what they're looking for in the apps and the performance and operations of different tools that they're looking to implement. And we also know when if something big is coming up or if there's assessments going out, we have a little bit of regular communication there that helps us support those initiatives and just knowing what's coming helps us from the technology side. It's that interaction that also helps because they'll be able to seed us information of, hey, I'm seeing this, or we're having some challenges with this particular tool, or this tool is slow. We have open lines of communication there between our team and the curriculum side, but email continues to be the primary tool that we use when we need to communicate out to our organization that a major system has an outage.
Yeah.
We need to get the status page update, and we get the updates from the vendor, and when we have a confirmed outage like that, email tends to be the tool of choice to share.
Awesome. That makes sense. Speaking of outages, you guys mentioned that you hear a lot of the issues that surface to you all come from user complaints, user reports. How do you currently monitor app performance, like app outages? Are you monitoring status pages? Like what does that look like for you all right now?
I will say that we do largely rely on user reporting or vendors reporting that there's a
Right.
known issue. Mark and I talked off earlier about like getting vendors to realize and possibly admit that there's an issue with their app. And so sometimes we're kind of in that holding pattern of no, it's not working. No, it's really not working. Vendors like, no, we think it's working. No, it's not working. And so getting so sometimes that can be a challenge is getting vendors on the same page. So you look at their status page and it doesn't even report anything. So but that's another opportunity for us for sure is having that insight to the apps. And I still feel that we're largely reactive with the desire to become more proactive.
Miranda, it's comforting knowing that we're not the only district that has that interaction with our vendors that way, where I feel like, we're on the phone trying to call them. And, I will say there was a particular situation last week that related to testing where the major app went down for testing and wasn't able, from what I heard later across the East Coast. And, because of that, they're calling my office and saying, hey, we can't get on this app, or we can't sign in and it's not working. And, my immediate reaction is I'm looking across network health and saying, network's healthy. Somebody needs to get on the phone and call this particular vendor. And in that particular time, their status page had no posting. And
Mm.
you would call and select tech support. And I'm going to guess because of the volume of phone calls, every time you would select tech support on their phone tree, it would disconnect your phone call. So, that finally the status page was updated, but we use some tools in our background. Some of the better vendors that use their status pages in a more accurate, transparent fashion, we're able to sign up for alerts, and we're able to pull them into a Teams chat to let our entire group know. But not everybody's like that. Not all those status pages are really in real time. They're very
Yeah.
reactive. We call up the phone, and then all of a sudden, about a half hour later, we see the status page come up with oh, there's an outage.
Yeah, they're waiting for you. It's funny. It's like you hear from the staff and then they're waiting to hear from you. And then finally you get the update. That sounds fun. You
Yeah.
yeah, sounds fun. You mentioned, so in terms of communicating, so you hear there's an outage. How do you confirm that it's real? You mentioned that you monitor the networks, Mark. Do you have other things that you do to confirm, like, okay, this is definitely the app's fault. It's nothing on our system.
I have a team and a stock of devices, and that technology team group chat that we have also helps, because our team out in the field is a key part of that. They jump in, and they're going to try to get next to whoever is having the issue, and getting that actual image of an error screen of what the error
Yeah.
is. I would love to say it's easy, but it's always harder than it should be. It feels
Yeah.
like internally. But that's crucial, because that's where we're going to try to take the experience. And one of my techs in one building is going to jump on the same app on another building, in another building, and say, hey, I'm seeing the same thing. And we're going to jump on a test device here, and say, yeah, we're all seeing it. And that's when I step back, and our network team is looking and saying, nope, network's running. Can you get to other things? Other apps are running. But I will also say it's interesting, not as much recently, but there was a period of time where a lot of the major cloud providers host multiple apps. So it
Yeah.
becomes this kind of whack-a-mole of, these three apps are down, and we come to find they are all hosted in the same cloud service provider, who then admits they were having an outage, and that
Right.
becomes a really interesting discussion to share with folks.
And that's regional too. Like that could impact half the country and not the other half.
Very much
That's
so.
so. So in turn, once you've confirmed, you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's the app, it's the vendor, it's not us. How do you communicate back out? I know you mentioned email is a big channel for you guys. You update a status page, Miranda. You mentioned like internally. Are those the primary ways that you guys are basically saying, hey, teachers, principals, we've got a handle on this, or are there other things that you're having to do?
I would say those are our primary methods that we fall to. We do have a portal that we can put banners and notifications on, but we tend to reserve those for very important announcements, and not
Yeah.
necessarily outages. Um, but yeah, we have a info board. We make sure our help desk folks are updated and aware. So if they get calls, it's up on their board, and they can say this is a known issue. And then we channel those updates down to our campus level staff.
Awesome. And Mark, what about you?
Very
Email?
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we try to be judicious in the number of messages we send. We are all getting too many messages, too many alerts. So we try to balance of, who needs to know what, and how we disseminate that. Of, it shouldn't just be, hey, there's a minor inconvenience with it, but if there's a major system that's being used across campuses, we want to make sure that we get the word out. A lot of it just because, again, we have limited resources to answer one-on-one questions about each and individual outage that folks are seeing. But trying to get that word out to the right people at the right time is, teachers aren't necessarily head down if they're
Yeah.
working with their students. They're not necessarily head down and, oh, look, there's an email that just came. They're not reading every email in real time. So it's an interesting challenge of how that gets communicated in a classroom. And Teachers also get very frustrated. They want their apps to work, as we all
Yeah.
do. There's not a lot of time if you planned an hour for an activity or an hour for a benchmark assessment, and the benchmark assessment tool isn't working. That hour is lost to have to go back to it the next day. That's an hour of
Yeah.
instruction that we spend 45 minutes spinning on, and we try to avoid that, but unfortunately, sometimes it's unavoidable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, teachers have a lot going on. Like the odds of them looking and checking every class session, I can't imagine that they would have the ability to do that anyway. All right. So one question to close us out. Thank you all so much for all this. This has been a great conversation. Is there one piece of advice that you all would share with some of your colleagues who are here, or your peers rather, who are here, or may watch this later, that, that have helped you in sort of like reducing some of those blind spots or managing all the stuff that you guys have on your plates?
I can start. I would say building very deliberate relationships with all the right stakeholders. You need the right people at the table, and everyone needs to have a seat. And so, um, for us, it's like including curriculum instruction or CNI folks, because sometimes they may hear of issues first, and if they know how to report it, or if they have a point of contact, especially for our big testing days or major curriculum related apps, then I think that that does help limit frustrations or reduce frustrations, is making sure that, okay, I'm going to reach out to my central office folks in charge of testing, make sure they're aware of this, and then they can go down to their points of contact at the campus, and I'll take it from a technology um, approach from the campus. And so I think that that helps a lot, is having those relationships in advance, so when an issue comes up, one, they trust that you're going to handle it, you're going to communicate it, and you tell them everything they need to know. And it just helps alleviate having to spend time clearing up misconceptions or ideas or people trying to figure out who to call, and kind of having that established already, I think really does help when you are reacting to those situations. And it also helps with the proactive as well, to identify what are those critical apps that would stop a teacher in their tracks. Like, I need to know
Yeah.
that. So those are the ones we may take a different approach for that when we find out there are issues. So I think it's just
Yeah.
inviting the right people to the table and building those relationships helps a lot.
I'm going to agree. Those relationships are key, Miranda. For us, it's the same thing. And, we have very good internal relationships and conversations with our folks, so we know what those key tools and items are. But that external relationship, I think, is really important. A lot of times in these companies and dealing with many vendors, they're not large organizations. We're larger than they are. And
Yeah.
being able to get in front of the right person, or get the email in front of the right person who says, oh, I know Cherry Hill, and when they're reporting an issue, they know what they're talking about, and let me go over to the dev team and have a conversation and get back to you. I think that's really key, that we're intentional, that when we onboard a tool, that you mentioned it, that we get to know who knows who and has a contact at a particular company. There's a large cloud provider that's out there that we interact with, and we recently had a challenge with one of their tools. And had I just called into the help desk queue, it would have taken weeks upon weeks of going in circles and folks not understanding. But having those relationships that I was able to email to folks who had worked with us and we had built conversations with over the course of 1 to 2 years, really, they were able to say, oh, we know what you're talking about. And oh, yeah, I heard this from 2 other districts. Let me go get this over to the other team. Still put that ticket in, but I'm going to take your ticket and the ticket from 3 other districts, and we're going to go talk to them about what this impact is. Your level one tech support person very frequently doesn't quite understand the impact of a teacher with an instructional tool who can't watch a video or can't have their class watch a video. But when you explain it to somebody on the other side of it, they understand the impact, as we've built that relationship. They're able to action it and take that impact that it's having to the right people.
I 100% agree with that. Just like your situation with testing last week, we were in the same situation. We didn't have a direct point of contact to that vendor. We were in the tech support line. So I think having those relationships, so when issues come up, it's easier to get something escalated. Very important.
Well, thank you guys so much. That's great advice. Um, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick demo. So pivoting a little bit to Lightspeed, we have a product launching um, very soon in the next couple of weeks that is designed to address a lot of the issues that Mark and Miranda touched on today. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick 5-minute kind of run through of what this product does. Thank you, Mark and Miranda, for sort of teeing me up so nicely. So we've, at Lightspeed, we've worked with districts like Cherry Hill and Northside for a long time. So we've heard about kind of some of the challenges and outstanding needs that districts have. And we set out to design a solution that would help districts be more proactive with all of the things that they're managing, which, as we heard today, it kind of, there's a broad number of issues, regardless of the size of your district, that are going to be ultimately falling to you in the IT department. So what we have here is Lightspeed Signal. There are 3 different components of this product: apps, devices, and internet. Sort of the three of the topics that came up a lot today. So I'll start with devices. We talked about the device swapping, the Johnny and Susie example of Johnny's supposed to have it and his sister Susie is the one that actually has the device. Chromebook's looking the same. One of the insights that we set out to provide is, hey, you've got a mismatch between who's using the device and who it's assigned to. So we have this unassigned login event that essentially tells you exactly that. So what you're able to do is see proactively here, all right, you could filter this and say, show me all the unassigned login issues across my district. You could filter it by school. Show me the ones at this school or that school or all elementary schools, to kind of get ahead of how often is this happening and then who's actually on the device. So you can come in here and see, we'll pretend these names are Susie and Johnny, okay, here's what's going on. You can maybe quickly see that they're siblings. You could quickly see they're in the same class, or maybe they're not even in the same grades. You can kind of come here and start to understand what is going on, who's accessing the device. For any event that we see on any of your devices, we're going to tell you who triggered the event. So who logged in, who was this person, where were they, what school are they in, what OU are they in, are they an elementary school student, are they in grade 8? Just to kind of give you that one-stop shop so that you're not fishing around between a bunch of different systems trying to figure this out. And also so that you can know proactively, you're not having to wait and start trying to solve a device issue and realize, okay, wait, I don't even know who has this device. We also have some sort of security oriented events related to unknown user access. So somebody outside of your org creating an account on a Windows machine, or the device gets stolen or it gets lost and you've just got someone outside of your org using it. You need to know about those issues, as well as kids accessing VPNs, proxies, Tors. We know that this happens more than it should, and that it's something that is currently difficult to identify. And so we set out all of those issues will kind of flow into the same place. So you're not, again, hopping around, waiting for teachers to report an issue. You're able, or students, you're able to just kind of see everything in one spot. Then the issue we talked about earlier related to devices under beds. There's another sort of report designed for that exact problem, where we're going to tell you those devices that haven't been seen in X number of days. So Mark mentioned 2 weeks would be a long time. You can filter this by hey, what hasn't been seen in a couple days, today, yesterday, a week, 2 weeks, 6 months. And if you've got a device under a bed, it's going to show up here. So you're going to be able to see, okay, this is something that is not being used. Maybe this kid chose to use their personal, super cool MacBook Pro, and we're gonna give this Chromebook to somebody else who actually needs it. And then in terms of your networks, we also will monitor the actual devices. So another thing, Mark, that you mentioned was sort of understanding what's happening in real life on your devices. So like that surge, a news events hits and everyone's getting online at the same time in one classroom, or an access point goes down, or whatever's happening in sort of on the actual devices. That's the data that you're going to see here in this network report. You'll be able to see and kind of group data and filter data by what's your campus network and what's off campus. So if you have issues, we've heard from districts that they're supporting community centers or other places where kids are learning. You'll be able to see and identify those both on the map geographically, and you can kind of see maybe where people are learning that you didn't know kids were congregating here after school. On top of that, you can also see just a general users report. So are there kids across my district who are just uh, don't have adequate internet, regardless of where they're trying to learn? So wherever that learning is happening, you're able to sort of make sure you can support all the kids across your district. And then not last, but certainly not least, apps was a hot topic today. We talked about the difficulty of relying on vendor status pages. So this apps report is designed to solve that exact challenge where we've got data coming from your devices that's going to tell us, are we seeing a spike in those error codes? Are we seeing issues? And we're going to monitor that for you guys in every 5 minutes. So you're going to know right away, hey, there's an issue, it's real. And then we talked about what do you do when you have to show your homework to the vendor that this is a real issue. We're going to capture, how many people are impacted? Are we seeing this across, how many schools, how many students, users, teachers? Is it happening just at Cherry Hill? Or are we seeing this in a few other schools or districts rather? So we'll be able to tell you, is this just like a you issue, or is this like a broader issue that we're seeing across other customers? And then being able to see what is that latency? Is it really slow? Like what's going on? Can they just not, is the error code rate really high? They just can't get there at all. So it just gives you that information to go to the vendor and say, hey, this is the real problem. And just to sort of let your staff know, okay, this is real. Like when sort of trickle the communication down, as you guys mentioned. All right, with only a few minutes to spare, I think we have time for maybe one question. And it's for you guys, not for me. I will ask, let's see. Okay, here's an interesting one. Have you uncovered any surprising trends in device data or app usage data that have changed how you're going to allocate resources? So I think that's getting at like, do you ever uncover anything that changes how you might support like specific schools or maybe like divvy out devices?
I definitely have seen with one of our other Lightspeed tools, we are starting to dive deeper into app usage and how much particular apps are being used more and more. And that's been an interesting piece of visibility. I can't say that I have done a ton of work directly or we've changed because of it, but the anecdotal evidence that we had is being more supported, that we have some apps that came with us past the pandemic that may not get the usage that matches up with the cost of the app. And that's where
Yeah,
we're also seeing a lot of app overlap I see right now, where we have
yeah,
multiple apps that do the same thing. And as some of the apps have continued to grow, we have to start stepping back and saying, do we need all of these? Maybe we can survive
yeah,
with two of them instead of three of them. Sometimes there's justified reason behind it, but we're trying to take a more critical look as budgets become tighter of, are there opportunities there where, maybe there's a tool we don't need because it's being used over here. A lot of that used to come, some of the vendors, that's major tools I would ask specific vendors for, can you give me insight into the usage of your tool? Because I want to be able to justify that we're using it. If 5 teachers are using, and again, we have 1,200 staff, 1,200 certificate staff members. If only a handful of people are using it at each campus, it may not make sense to have a district-wide subscription.
I agree with everything Mark just said. Apps, we do use it a lot for apps too. And what we did learn when we onboarded Digital Insight, we were introducing it to our CNI folks, is they realized real quick that they had paid solutions out there, a paid app that they had written into the curriculum, but Digital Insight was showing that teachers and students were using a free something instead. And so they're like, what? We pay all this money for the thing, and they're over here using the free thing. And so it was very insightful for them as well to have an idea. Using it for ROIs is a big plus as well, understanding what's being used and is the investment worth it, juice worth the squeeze. And then also for devices, we do leverage some of the data to determine if our current technology standards should be revisited, reviewed, adjusted based on usage and coming, out of this forced into a one-to-one environment in 2020. And now we're kind of figuring out, okay, now that we're out of that emergency response, what is right? What is the right scenario? What is right for instruction and right for teaching and right for learning? And so digging into data a little helps kind of guide some of those conversations and does contribute to the decision-making process.
Awesome. I'm glad Insight's helping. It's always great to hear. Thank you all so much for your time today. I know you're very busy. I do want to just share a quick QR code for anyone who would like a demo of the product I showed earlier, Lightspeed Signal. I'll give you guys a few seconds to grab that. Otherwise, I think this has been a great conversation, and I want to thank you guys again for your time. And thanks everybody for joining.